of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 44. Date Night, Part 2. Cards Against Humanity was admittedly hilarious. In a terrible, horrible way. No wonder it had been banned back in the 21st century. However, there was no denying the reverie, the laugh snorts, and the general degradation of Midnight's mind, was there? Then, the food eaten and presents shared. He'd bid the pros goodbye and blushed up to his ears when Hizashi took his hand and kissed it! How illogical. However, with the police force officers on the way, he'd not really had any time to stop and ponder why exactly such a thing had made him flush. Therefore, standing outside under the shade of his marquee, Dabi and Tomra had set it up for him. He'd eyed the two men who'd arrived in an unmarked police car in shorts and t-shirts similar to his own.
Okay,
he began.
Stretching is vital before beginning this kind of training, so for today, we'll focus primarily on that and see what your strength, flexibility, and core are like, alright?
Tsukoji Naomasa, 23, 6'3", good muscle tone, was relatively strong, and outside of his stiff posture, most police types tended to be eye-struck, didn't they? Good at taking instruction and not afraid to be knocked on his butt. That was a trait that had served him well in the coming weeks. Sansa, however, was the more agile of the two, but strangely clumsy as all get-outs. He'd had to remind himself several times that having a cat mutation where you lacked a human head didn't automatically give you a cat sense of balance, innate grace, and poise. God, he was pretty sure he'd heard his teenagers laughing from inside the cafe as the 20-year-old officer continued to trip over his feet and clatter into his partner. Damn it all, it shouldn't have been so adorable, but it was. I'm hopeless, aren't I?
No,
he stated firmly, his right hand extended to him to help it back up.
From what little I understand about police training, aiming and firing weapons alongside distance running is at the heart of what you're taught, yes?
He asked, his gaze appraising them as they panted and chugged down complimentary lemonade. Yeah, Naomasa agreed, the towel hung about his shoulders, now rubbing at his face and neck. I thought I was in good shape before today. He grinned, his expression sheepish.
You have nothing to be concerned about,
he told him flatly.
This kind of movement requires you to utilize muscles in new and different ways,
he explained.
You'll be sore tomorrow. However, the more you practice, the more you build muscle memory. The easier the katas will come, alright?
Nodding and bowing, he then had them returning to their starting positions before moving them through a series of low-impact kicks and jabs. However, when Sansa tripped into his superior officer in front again, their bodies collapsing to the ground in a cacophony of limbs, they'd all shared a light laugh and headed back inside the cafe for a cool-off. It'd take them a while. Martial arts wasn't for everyone for a number of reasons. But he was sure that he could get them to where they needed to be before September. If they could make it, it'd be worth letting them work with his study group on Sunday mornings, wouldn't it? Nothing gave you motivation like Bakako Katsuki threatening to punch you until you get it right. Did it. Hilarious. Greeting his adult learners in the wide, airy, soft-floored space that the air-conditioned yoga studio provided them, Shouta knew that he'd make the right decision. Once the cooler September weather hit, they'd return to the open-aired marquee, of course, and then they could retreat back here in the winter months, couldn't they? Hitoshi and Izuku were with him, their bodies leading a group of new starters in the stretches they'd need to master, whilst he paired up the more experienced learners to practice escaping hair grabs, clinch moves, and mount position scenarios. Collectively, he was certain that 25 of the 40 people who were attending his sessions were proficient in the majority of the techniques he was teaching them. He'd been approached by an MU student last week and her grateful, tearful father as, thanks to his training and focus on remaining calm in a situation so you could rely on yourself to get free and run for safety, she'd managed to protect herself against some handy lout who'd tried to drag her into an alley. She told him that she heard his voice whispering to her as she'd snapped out of her fear, turned and grabbed the man, taller, stronger, but completely thrown off kilter by her movements, by his hand, twisted it, and trapped his arm in a painful lock. She'd forced him to his knees by threatening to snap it and yelled for help, the The police had been with her, and the two salarymen, Kahako and his friend. She'd hugged them this evening too, who'd rushed in to help. In a matter of minutes. The thug, someone not previously known to the police, had been hauled away and would be locked up for at least a year. Small mercies. He remembered fondly sharing a hug with her, and making sure that he'd taken a description of the master just in case, and praising her strength. He was now eagerly welcoming the group of men and women from her MU course who she'd brought with her this afternoon, their faces determined as they watched the tots and mimicked their stances. Such good kids. Kids who would be safer and living in a community of people being able to look after themselves and others for the most part. Oh yes, slowly but surely, by enabling people like that student and her friends, he knew that things would get better. Most villains who chose that lifestyle due to the ease of picking on weaker people would soon have no more victims to claim, would they? And that, he knew, was a very big step in the right direction. By 1940, he was showered and dressed in his standard black jeans, leather boots, and the sky blue t-shirt with the black cat curled over his heart, his damp hair shoved up in a muzzy bun as he oversaw the bread machines diligently mixing dough, set the rice cookers on their timers, and placed a few ingredients and ice cream orders. Then, after checking over the smart till, his profit margins were getting healthier by the day regardless of the new expense of renting that studio space. It was worth it for the good he could do in a more comfortable area, and running a few tax calculations, 2000 was only 5 minutes away. Hitoshi was upstairs with the teens. He'd already hugged him goodnight and was assured that the boy was okay to have a movie night with the older boys. He'd be in bed for 21:30 and he would be home by 22:30, in any case, if he was needed. And the cafe was spotless. Good. That was one less thing to worry about, wasn't it? Ding, ding. Looking to the door, his smile easy, he saw President Mike. "What's your mother? Is that shady, you Shouta? I think I can trust you not to go spreading my real name around, right?" Stood in another civilian outfit of stonewashed jeans, maroon t-shirt, black jacket, and two beaded necklaces. Gone were the amber lens sunglasses, and instead, he wore a pair of red-framed specs with his hair brushed into a glossy, shaggy-tail bun. He looked good. "Hey there, you," he said with a wink. "You ready to get your wire back?" "Then let's go!" Chuckling as his hand was grabbed. It was a loose hold. He could have pulled away if he wanted to. Shouta allowed the other to pull him outside by the other's car, an American model with 2 white stripes painted down the middle of it. How inconspicuous. Was waiting for them. "Okay, my man, let's get this show on the road!" He grinned whilst opening the front passenger door open for him. "Flex," he said, his tone a little hesitant, as he slipped onto the leather seat, buckled his belt, and tried to ignore the sea of fast food wrappers and drinks cartons behind him. He'd never understand why people ate such awful stuff. However, he wasn't one to judge, even if the vast collection of rubbish behind him was making him uneasy. "So, where do you want to go, Dad?" Blinking, his brows rising slightly when the other slipped behind the steering wheel, Shouta regarded him carefully. "I'm just playing with ya," the jade-eyed man snickered. "Did you really think that I just rock up with no plan, huh?" "For a second there, yeah, I really thought you had," his mind deadpan whilst he chuckled a little sheepishly. "I was concerned that we'd have to rely on my not-so-stellar dating knowledge," he told him as the car pulled away from the curb and they set off. "So, where are we going?" "It's a surprise!" The DJ come hero winked. "For just me or both of us, I wonder." His mind unhelpfully supplied before his brows furrowing, the man cried out, "Oh, this is my jam!" and turned up the car's radio full blast, the pulsing pop-rock western songs thudding through the speakers as they made a sharp turn and headed for the freeway. Well, as normal dates for his age group went, not that he'd read about such things too much before heading to bed, this was pretty standard, wasn't it? "Woo! Yeah, baby, move me like a satellite, you're my 60 kryptonite, yeah! Maybe that'll be Evan rights. Spin it, turn it, rock it like a dynamite, your body's out of sight, woo! He should have grabbed some earplugs before heading out tonight, shouldn't he? By the time the car pulled into a parking lot which overlooked the beach, Shouta was pretty sure he'd not suffered any permanent hearing loss as he got out of the vehicle and took in the sunset over the water. Considering he lived so relatively close to this stretch of water and sand, he'd never spent a full day here. It'd be nice to bring the tats for a day trip when they eat that down a bit, wouldn't it? He knew that Inko would be game, and so long as they brought some parasols with them. He, like many people of Japan, didn't understand what the Western world's obsession with tanning was. Sure, he couldn't argue that there wasn't an aesthetic appeal, but to him, the risks associated with sun exposure greatly outweighed the perks. The teens would probably come too. Let's go at the view, huh? Turning to the slightly taller man, his left hand having tugged his bobble free, the cafe owner smiled.
Yeah, since I'm usually surrounded by so many sky rises, it's really freeing to see so much open sky and so many colors.
He mused.
So, are we going for a walk, or...
We can on the way back to the car if you like. Hisashi grinned, his gaze eyeing the sand skeptically. I'm more of a city kid, you know? Getting gritty, itchy sand between my toes in other places isn't my idea of fun, but hey, anything for you, Sunshine.
No, it's fine.
He stated whilst walking around the large, sleek vehicle to follow him.
I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable.
He furthered as they turned their back on the magnificent sunset and walked towards the promenade. You're so sweet. The bro smiled. Okay, you have any idea why we're here? Not just romantically down the beach, clearly. I knew that the stupid melodramas Itsu-san used to watch instead of looking after me and the others were full of crap. He thought, his eyes looking around the various shops, bars, and restaurants they were walking past.
Can't say that I do.
He mused.
Are we getting sushi?
No! Get drawn up! The blonde snickered. It's not that I don't like traditional foods, but, all of the squiggly bits and tentacles, yeah, no thanks! Chuckling as the man wiggled his fingers to imitate a sea life he was talking about, Shouta nodded his agreement whilst looking around at the bustling area peppered with couples and groups of people their age, all milling about and flitting in and out of places to purchase souvenirs, street food, and fruit smoothies.
Are we visiting the aquarium?
Boring! The other countered before nodding to one of the busier streets. Goody! I got, my friend, you and I are going to meet VIPs at a little club down this way where a very good friend of mine is doing a small set, but shush! He stage whispered, his hands waving in dramatic abortive gestures. This is a private gig, you dig? He breathed. I had to pull quite a few strings to get us tickets, but I know we got a nosy guy, you know? Not really. He thought, his dark eyes roaming around a lavalier area where people dressed up in the same trendy styles that his date was wearing had already queued up, his mind becoming a little self-conscious. It wasn't as though he cared what he looked like really, because that'd be illogical. However, when they approached a stern-looking four-armed bouncer who guarded the line, texting, chatting 20-somethings and a red velvet rope boundary, he was aware of people staring at him and Izashi as they approached the brute. He hoped that he didn't show the other up by being dressed so casually. The Copacabana club, which looked like a beach shack you'd see in American movies, with its multicolored neon signs, servers in Hawaiian shirts and drinks menus, posted outside in multicolored neon borders alongside posters showing off various performers he didn't know, hosting cocktails. Cocktails! Loaded with all kinds of juices, alcohol, and plastic toys, umbrellas, and fruit? Huh. Hey, my man, Bunchy! The blonde greeted. The 7-foot giant stood so imperiously behind the roped-off barrier. He was trying not to focus on the queuing people balking, staring, and gawking at them as they stood there. Damn, he wouldn't have minded joining the back. Whilst pulsing music thudded behind the door the bruiser guarded.
Your mother-son.
The white tank top wearing man nodded, cobalt eyes narrowing at him as he struggled not to cross his arms. Fidget. Hey!
What you find this one, eh? It's a cutie, but ain't he a little more emo goth than your usual guests? Now, what happened to the other pretty little twink you were here with a few weeks ago,
Or turn around and run in the opposite direction? Ah! Have mercy, you big old kid, you! The bro laughed, his cheeks pinking. This is Aizawa Shouta. He's a reputable businessman and someone who could kick both of our asses some 100 minutes, he introduced. And we should be on Iki's VIP list, right? He pushed his teeth grit a little as he fought off his embarrassment. He wasn't surprised that the other man was so popular. He was just as sunny as his name suggested, attractive, young, and a licensed hero besides.
Yep, there you are, so please, head on through.
The bouncer nodded with another bow after he removed the roped barrier and waved them past him and towards the shuddering door.
It was nice to meet you, Aizawa.
He finished with a wink and a snicker. God, he'd never felt more uncomfortable in his life. Entering the venue, what do you want to drink, huh? Had been a loud and disorienting experience. What? Ellie thought that their nearest mall's gaming arcade, the one that his teenagers liked to frequent, was noisy and overly colorful. That manga-splattered place had nothing on the American-themed area he was being pulled through right now. The small tables, which littered the vast rectangular space with just enough room for the perky servers to walk through, were crowded around a small stage loaded with sound equipment, lighting rigs, and instruments in a wide bracket shape to make space for the strangest dance floor we'd ever seen. Drink? You want a cocktail? Very good! The place was packed, full of people in various states of drunkenness. Some were wearing flower-lead necklaces. You could imagine Otaka thinking at agent of fawning over such things. Others had grass skirts tied around their waists, and some were drinking from straw-laced goldfish balls. God!
I don't drink alcohol.
There were even a few rowdier couples, a very Western, already flouncing around the dance floor, which rotated. That couldn't be safe, could it? In front of the stage, there forms a glow with fluorescent bracelets, necklaces, and halos. Mark Dillman! Then, as they finally got to the bar, he'd never liked having to push and shove his way anywhere, and holy crap, how much were these jokers charging for a simple bottle of water? Shouta regarded the wide-spanning menu bewilderedly. No wonder people his age didn't have any money. Was this price list considered reasonable? Hey, Shinchan! 2 virgin pina coladas, por favor! Trying his best not to grumble, Hisashi had clearly put a lot of thought and effort into this date. This was something someone his age was meant to enjoy, and he shouldn't be ungrateful or wants to go home. The cafe owner very nearly went to viciously elbow whomever had just grabbed his backside, his eyes flashing red in warning. Remember what you tell the kids. Reacting to such things with physical violence isn't the right thing to do. However, when the taller, broader man winked at him and wandered off, he was very tempted to stalk after him. Yeah, you better fuck off, bastard. He thought it was dickheads getting away with such things that to him led to escalations in sexual assault and other awful things. He shouldn't have allowed him to walk away, but he could no longer see him within the sea of people, and he doubted that the bouncers could or would do anything, even if he reported it. He hated places like this. There you go! Looking back to his date, and hoping that he didn't look too disgruntled, he took the strange ceramic totem-looking jug, rammed full of sparkly bits, skewered fruits, and an umbrella. Thank God there was a straw. Not that he was particularly looking forward to tasting the heavily perfumed drink, and allowed the older man to take his free hand. We got a table reserved! Hang tight, okay? Nodding, and trying not to cringe or spill the beverage she'd been given, Shouta tried to focus on where his feet were going as they weaved through the crowds and made their way, small mercies, to a seated area that was roped off. Well, what do you think? Oh, you don't want an honest answer to that, do you? He thought whilst trying his best to smile at him.
It's something different,
he called, and how in the world were they supposed to talk or get to know each other in such a place? Or maybe that was just his own old-fashioned thinking? This is what people his age were supposed to do, and weren't they?
Who's Iki-san?
Oh, she's great! The other yelled back. That was her song on the radio when we were driving here, you know? Ah, goody! Iki-san's set had been blessedly short, although the 2 hours he'd sat there had made it feel infinitely longer. Hisashi, and yes, He felt guilty for declining, had tried to get him to dance a few times. He'd waved him off his head, gesturing to another young man who'd been making eyes at the jade-eyed pro from the second they sat down. They'd look good together. Therefore, at 2200, he'd assumed that they'd be going back to the car. What? But it's so early, and you haven't danced once, Shouta!
I've got work tomorrow, remember?
He replied, his smile sheepish against the flashing lights and booming music.
And the kids are expecting me home soon, too, you know.
Blinking, and then face-palming, the hero shook his head ruefully, his face embarrassed. Ah, sorry, you're right, follow me! Once again running the gauntlet of the somehow more crowded area, Shouta caught sight of the slender, pouting brunette who'd been enjoying a dance or five with his date and frowned a little. There was no reason for his reluctance and responsibilities to get in the way of Izashi's fun, was there? Nodding to himself, the cooler, cleaner night air filling his lungs as they exited past a chuckling Bishi, the eatery owner sucked in another deep breath whilst beside him the other tried to smile at him. Their bodies stood on the still lively high street. I'm sorry, Shouta. He sighed, his tone thoroughly dejected as he folded his arms, the previously joyous lips marred by a light frown. You hated every minute of that, didn't you?
No, not at all.
He replied honestly, their eyes locking as he stood a little straighter while shoving his hair back up.
I was really thoughtful of you to bring me here.
He reasoned.
This is clearly one of your favorite places, and you wanted to share that with me.
He chuckled.
I'm the one who should be apologizing.
He admitted with a mild shrug, his expression self-depreciating.
I'm not the best in social situations, and I've never, been into this kind of thing.
He admitted a little guiltily.
If I'd had a normal childhood, then I probably would have been.
He mused.
But still, this was a really interesting experience.
He grinned.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's someone a little lovesick for you in there who could give you even more interesting experiences if you're lucky.
He chuckled. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have...
Izashi.
He breathed, his right hand reaching for the other's left and giving it a squeeze.
I don't want to get in the way of you having a good time. I loved watching you enjoying yourself.
He told him kindly.
You are an incredible dancer, and you were singing along to those songs so passionately.
He complimented.
Please don't let me stop you from going back in there and having a good time, alright?
He smiled.
It is early, and hey, it's not as though we can't go out again together some other time. Maybe, somewhere a little quieter.
You sure? You mean it? The blonde blinked. But it'd be, really rude and wrong of me to just leave you.
I'm not in the habit of saying things that I don't mean.
He interrupted fondly.
I can catch a cab, but do me a favor and leave your car here if you start drinking, okay?
You gotta get that! He laughed, the pair indulging in a hug. Then, as they pulled away, the freshly turned 22-year-old rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. You really are amazing, Shouta, he stated warmly. I feel like such a silly little kid next to you. He said, his tone a little shy. Here you are, still 21 and running a successful business, raising 3 kids and looking after the rest of us besides. He sighed. Text me when you're home safe?
Oh, of course.
He replied pleasantly.
Don't forget to come by tomorrow to pick up the rest of your cake, okay?
Deciding to go for a quick walk across the sands, the eraser cork user looked up at the flawless star-speckled sky and let out a breath. He didn't take the time to enjoy such things enough, did he? No. And there was just something about the soothing lapping of gentle waves against the cool water-darkened sand and the light breeze chasing away the oppressive heat of the day, wasn't there? Oh, yes. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to bring all of his precious people here. Maybe he could even entice them to come for a walk with him down the sands on an evening, just like he had so long ago. Yes, he remembered with great fondness how he'd brought his first clutch of little brothers here on the spring and early summer afternoons when he was 14, as Itsu-san's drunken stupors began earlier and earlier in a day, giving them the freedom to go out exploring without any slurred, rambling repercussions. Upon reflection, even though they'd had no money and only a few threadbare towels, coming here and playing in the waves had formed some of his happiest memories. Then, when his studies had come calling, their visits grew less and less. He hoped that it hadn't been too selfish of him to prioritize his education at that time. Bzz, 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 bzz. Looking to his phone, his cab was 2 minutes away. He took one last look out across the ocean, turned around and made his way to the parking lot, his mind and heart a little lighter at the thought of going home.